and it's May 18th, 2022. Please turn your phones off or on vibrate, and then stand and join me for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So Stuart Murray.
Here.
Bill Woolman.
Here.
Zach Burkett.
Here.
And Rick Miera
Here.
from Italy.
Portugal.
Portugal.
Oh, you're in Portugal?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I think for some reason.
Lynn, I think
All
there's
right.
somebody.
Mel's in it.
Hey,
No, Mel's not.
yeah, talk slow for the next 20 seconds. You can.
Oh, maybe that's right.
Here's
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, John. Okay, here's Alsabrook. So Alsabrook is now here. So we have a quorum. I guess I'm gonna turn this over to you.
Okay.
Okay. So Mr. Curry will do a brief presentation, discussion of the budget, and then I guess Raina will answer questions.
All right. So we're here today because of we are required by the DFA to turn in a final budget by
Oh, you couldn't hear me?
July 31st. We're required by the DFA to turn in a preliminary budget
Oh, it's
by
hard.
June 1st. And in that request, they would want as little changes between June 1st and June 1st and July 31st. They want as little changes as possible within the budget. So we thought it was appropriate that we make this presentation to you today so that you can insert any changes into this when we take our vote on this, that we're actually not required to have a vote on in a form of a resolution. But we think the mayor thought that it would be appropriate that the council have a good hard look at this so that there'd be as few changes as possible between June 1st and July 31st. So that's the reason that we're here today prior to our next meeting on Tuesday. We are projecting in revenues for this upcoming fiscal year 23, we're projecting $6,846,084. And that includes that taking into account a 15% increase in our budget FY22 budget. We will know the actuals on our revenues by July 15th. So we're looking at the 22 budget that you have in front of you that we have a 15% increase on. We anticipate that our revenues will continue to go, but we won't have the final 2 months until July 15th. So we've based that 15% increase on the 22 budget, which was $5.9 million. The main reason for the increase is payroll. As you all know, we instituted a number of pay increases across the village. The only people who did not receive pay increases were the elected officials and the administrator. The FY23 budget, as you see in front of you, is the same as the projections that we have. In that budget that is before you, you have an increase in personnel in the fire department of 2.5 firefighters. We'll be looking at starting with 2 firefighters. And then in December, we'll have a review of the entire budget as we've done in the past. And if necessary, we will add another half firefighter and proceed. We've also taken out the position of grant writing that falls into the administrative budget. So that budget item has been removed. We still have in there a deputy clerk position that we're budgeting for. If we will review the budget in total, like I said, in December of this year, and if there are any adjustments that need to be brought back to the council, we'll of course do that. We are making these revenue projections primarily based upon the fact, as you saw at the last council meeting, been emailed to you that our gross receipts taxes overall have increased 54% so far in this fiscal year, which is a healthy increase. So we are trying to be prudent, but we also think, judging by the fact that the GRTs increased by 54%, that we were being prudent. And I'll answer this question before anybody answers it. If you look on the last page of the page, it's actually it's listed as page 2. At the very last line above total revenues, you see a term prior year revenue. So what Raina put in there is $50,000 as far as revenue. And that's based upon the fact that we've anticipated, we've seen since 2014, we've seen fund balances usually on the neighborhood of about $300,000 a year every year since 2014. So what we have done is taken 50,000 of that $300,000 fund balance that we probably will get this year and put it into our revenue projection, which obviously leaves us some room to move around in if revenues do fall short between now and December. So that in a nutshell is our budget and why we had the 15% increase and what we based that 15% increase on. So we're here to answer your questions, explain things, hear your inputs, your desires, wants, wishes, and then have something to present to you at next Tuesday's meeting that looks probably very close to this, but will have any input that you have here today.
So Ron, let me ask you, clarify something. Now, part of this 15% increase includes the pay raises we already have approved, the 7%.
Right. Well,
Did you already say that? I think you did.
But that's coming. We looked at that for the last quarter of this year based upon our revenue increases. We gave in April, we gave across the board to every employee in the village a 9.84%, 9.84, I think it was, percent increase in their salaries. And then everybody else, essentially except the department heads, received an additional 7% increase in their numbers, which amounts to close to a 16%, almost a 17% increase for every employee in the village except for the department heads. And we've done that so that we could be competitive.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we're more competitive than we were, but as soon as we found this out, of course, we got calls both from Rio Rancho and Bernalillo wanting to know how we did that and who we used to do it. And so I guess it's kind of a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
But that's the basis of the increases in our budget are almost entirely because of payroll.
Yeah. We decided that we needed at least 2 firemen this fiscal year. Chief thinks he needs 5. So we compromised and said, okay, we'll do 2 to start, find 2 good people, because we have a lot of good people in the fire department as well as the police department. And in December, January, whenever we go over this, if we're doing okay, we're generating the revenue that we anticipate based upon the history, then we'll look at adding an additional fireman. So we'll be up to almost where he would like to cover all the bases. The problem is, they're spread so thin right now. Yeah. And this is not going to change. Well, I shouldn't say that. This is not going to improve anytime soon. It may change for the worse. We don't know that. We had talked about increasing the number of police officers, but since we already have 2 vacancies, there was no reason to push forth for an additional officer. But again, we may reconsider that December, January, depending on how we're doing, because the usual ratio is 1 officer to every 500 people. And we have about a population of around 8,500, which would be 17 officers, and we have 14 right now. So that's sort of the other part of the personnel story.
Both the chiefs have been very forthcoming on their needs, and neither one of them, we believe, have tried to inflate anything. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, Councilor. So how about fuel costs? Because it's gone through the roof. Are we contracting with anybody for fuel, or does it go on the open market?
We are not contracting with any, mayor, council. We are not contracting with any, but we did do the projections a little bit higher so that they can.
I'm sorry, I'm
Projections for higher in here.
Chief, do you want to make a comment?
Council Mayor, so we utilize for fuel purposes the WEX fuel card services, which is actually the only one on the state contract. So it's kind of limited there. So we do enjoy the tax breaks because of using that, and that's why they're on the state contract. So as far as the police department goes, we obviously use the most fuel out of anybody. We have to be out there patrolling 24/7. So we average about 1,000 gallons a month, and I've been budgeting for the past several years at about $3.50 a gallon. And when we were in the $2 a gallon range, everybody thought I was crazy. But so now we're looking to where we're probably going to use exactly about the 43,000 that was budgeted for PD, which includes animal services for fuel costs. So we did not request an increase in that respect. And obviously we're hoping, like everybody else, that the cost per gallon does go down in the near future. We've also made some other accommodations. The last two vehicles we've gotten are 4 cylinders. They're not great for patrol use, but they are for detective and administrative use, and they're getting pretty good mileage, up in the upper 20 miles per gallon. So that's helpful. And then of course, down the road, we're looking at hybrid and electric vehicle options. Of course, provided that they're available. That's one of the issues that we're having right now, is just not being able to find exactly what we're looking for. So as far as who we use for fuel, we encourage the officers to fuel up in the village so we can get the tax that's collected per gallon here as well. But if an officer is on their way home or on their way in Albuquerque and they're pretty low, we're not going to discourage them from filling up. And they're still using that same WEX fuel card that is on the state contract, and it's a central billing, so that makes it easier for finance as well. So I hope I answered your question, but if not, I'm still up here. So
Yes.
Mayor, are the police officer salaries for the 2 vacancies in the budget?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so to fill those positions, if that comes about, we're covered
Yes.
here. So I just got back from, as I mentioned, from the new counselors and mayor training in Las Cruces, and there was a terrific presentation by DFA.
I'm sorry, by whom?
From DFA.
Oh, okay, DFA.
And they're almost begging people to apply for money. So there's a couple of things I wanted to mention. One, and Rick, you probably heard this also, when you're training. There is apparently under the U.S. Department of the Treasury, the state and local fiscal recovery funds. That's over 2 years, and according to them, last year we got it's a total of 2,143,000 and change divided into 2. So in June, we should expect to get another 1,071,000. I was wondering if that's included in the revenues here.
Yes.
Mayor, council, it is included, but it's in a special fund, so you won't see it on your general fund. It won't be on the first page.
It'll be in a special fund, correct?
It's on page.
And we're already trying to figure out how to spend all that.
Yeah, but we don't
It's
have
on
those
page
pages. We only got
48.
this.
Right, that's all I have too, but I know but it's available to you,
Okay.
correct?
Yes,
Yeah, I know it's on, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Raymond.
What page did you say it was?
48.
48. American Rescue Plan Act.
Yeah.
The second part of it will be budgeted in a bar as soon as we get it.
And the other pot of money apparently comes through the county manager. And that is, I'm sorry, let's see. Quality of life grants, about $45 million. And I asked specifically if that could go toward a performing arts center or an arts center. And they said, yes. There's going to be a webinar on that on the 26th of May. And June 15th is the deadline for application. It opens on June 1st. The application deadline is June 15th.
That's the first I've heard.
Yeah. Okay. So that's something we can follow up on. And
Didn't I forward that to you, Melanie? Didn't we, was that's not where Tanya's getting the, no, I've seen that. I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
And we actually talked to, but one of the problems we have is the window to apply.
Yep.
And many of these, as I understand it, you need to be farther along than just thinking about something. You actually have to have some kind of a conceptual plan that's a little bit farther along than we are, for example, with the Performing Arts Center. We still haven't agreed upon exactly what all is going to be there, which we're trying to do.
well, it might be worth looking into.
It
at this
certainly is
point.
worthwhile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's money that's available and it's gonna go quickly. So in that context, I'm wondering how much the grant writer line item was and why we removed that if a lot of these monies are becoming available.
So I don't recall what the amount was, but we've talked to Chuck Thomas
Mhm.
to help us with grants.
Yeah.
And we focused on specifically things like, FEMA grants, Clean Water Revolving Fund grant, not grants, but loans and grants.
Right.
We can help. We can do that.
And he can certainly, given his skills, I mean, he gives webinars on writing grants. And given the fact that Tanya has also been very much involved in writing grants, we thought that money could be used in a little bit different way than perhaps just being locked away as a grant writer. Because we have grant writers. They just have other jobs. And then Chuck is what we call him, a 1099. He's a
Yeah, it's a contract.
contractor. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so he basically doesn't get paid unless he does something. And
No,
there's a
he's
limit to
great.
what he gets.
He's a
Yeah.
great guy.
Yeah.
They also suggested Mr. Cog would be very helpful when it comes to grant writing. So they work with a lot of communities around.
Yes.
All the cogs in the
Yes.
state. There's also a whole section, rural infrastructure funds, which is separate apart from some of the other funds.
Yes.
And then there's about $1.5 million. I don't think we would qualify for this necessarily, but there's about $1.5 million to provide for matching funds for federal grants or state grants that require matching and communities can't come up with a match. So that's
Unfortunately, we can.
we can't. Okay. Yeah. This is all state money, has nothing to do with the other federal monies, but it was it's a lot of money out there.
It's good.
Yep.
It's great.
Part
Raina,
of the tsunami.
Say what?
Part of the tsunami.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Raina, would you explain cannabis?
Per DFA, we won't be budgeting the cannabis this year. They want us to know exactly what we're going to be getting throughout this year, and then we'll start budgeting it next fiscal year.
But will the cannabis GRT flow to us?
It will, we're not exactly sure what we're going to get or from whom yet, and that's why they don't want it budgeted.
It's,
So
it's,
we're kind of in the dark on the cannabis.
what's unusual about that is that by setting cannabis aside, that makes it and making it so identifiable is totally different than the way they do the rest of the gross receipts tax. We could not call up Santa Fe and find out how much Drew throws in the pot or Indigo Crow or any of those folks. But obviously cannabis is going to be looked at very closely in that respect.
John, Zach, questions, comments?
Yeah, it would be great for any of the departments that have an increased headcount, just to know, maybe just a little summary statement about how many are part-time, how many are full-time.
How many part-time do we? We don't have any part-time, do we?
Well, and that's easy.
Yeah. Pretty much everybody's full-time. Oh, sorry.
I believe are budgeted for one part-time position for the crossing guard, which
Oh,
however,
you
has
need
been-
now.
Yeah, it's been vacant for the last
And
couple of
Walter's gonna be
years.
gone.
Yeah. The position wasn't filled during COVID, of course, and then when school reopened, they needed her. She's also an APS employee as a nurse's assistant. They needed her in the nurse's office to conduct COVID screenings as well. So that's why Officer Heaton and some of the other officers just been filling in that capacity. So that's the one part-time position for the PD. And I don't think there are any others for the village. I mean, we don't count seasonal, right? So,
Only Parks and Rec, they're
Yeah.
lifeguards.
Yeah, that's for the summer. Yeah.
yeah,
Seasonal.
so that's been about it. So yeah,
Lifeguards.
Thanks.
we may end up filling that one day.
Chief, can I ask you one more question
Yes,
while
sir.
you're up there?
Yeah.
So we got the 16% pay increases across the board for the
Yeah.
most part, but I'm looking at your
Yeah.
guys' the fiscal 2022 versus 2023. It's almost a 30% increase. Did the 2022 include the 2 empty positions in that budget, or were those?
So for FY, Councilor Burkett, Mayor and Council, for FY 22, we were budgeted 15 full-time positions at, of course, the previous pay rates. And then so for FY 2023, we were allotted 16 sworn plus the increases. So that could be the difference.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. Raina might be able to,
Yeah, it was
Yeah, she's a
750
dream.
versus 980. So it's almost
Yeah.
exactly 30%.
yeah,
That's what
okay.
it is.
So.
There was
Yeah, so
less.
that additional position, which of course, that one was never filled. That was more so in anticipation of inevitable attrition, all right? So that we could have hopefully somebody ready in case somebody leaves or retires, whatever the case may be. However, since we had the one new officer leave, we now have 2 vacancies. So obviously we want to get those filled with the best possible candidates, and then look at that possible of 17th position down the road, maybe midway fiscal, and do some reorganizing, as far as investigations, supervision, and so forth. But we don't have the luxury to entertain those other specialties right now.
Yes, sir.
I know it's an ongoing discussion, but I wanted to raise something about animal services. If we decide to go ahead with a temporary building, I've been in discussions with Commissioner Kathy Brook from the Sandoval County Commission, and she yesterday committed to between $20,000 and $25,000 to go.
Oh, that's
toward
really
that.
nice. Yeah.
She would need an agreement and outline, et cetera. But I think she has to spend that money by June 30th. It's part of the fiscal year, which ends.
Hopefully we'll have an answer before then. It'll be a tight squeeze.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's still a lot of hoops we have to jump through, but no, that would be very nice to have extra 20, because we're anticipating a budget that's probably not going to be over 100 a quarter or something in that range.
Yeah.
120,000.
Yeah, and I think a good partnership between the county
Absolutely.
and the village and maybe Dennis Friends to put all that together. So great,
So every little bit we can cobble together will help.
great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was just curious. I noticed Parks and Recs has a decrease in their budget, but I was hoping maybe some $10,000 for bicycles for the Corrales Elementary. Is that going to be included or not?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we have pretty much been told by our attorney that we can't do that. It's a violation of the anti-donation clause, and the way it has to go through a not-for-profit or nonprofit or a 501c3 or something like
Yeah,
that.
so-
Can you explain?
So Randy said, there's 2 issues. There's the anti-donation clause where, the village can't be giving things to residents. But the other issue was the liability issue. So he said, if the village purchases these bicycles, gives them to a child, and that child is injured while riding that bicycle, the village could be held liable for that. So, and then the other part of that was in talking to the bicycle committee, they felt like since they're just an advisory committee, that they didn't want to be responsible for administering funds. And they didn't vote on it as a group. And so they didn't feel that it was right for them to request that money
yeah.
at this time.
They didn't want the money.
I know Randy's not here, but if you were to give a bicycle out of this fund to a child, couldn't the parents sign a waiver of liability?
I don't think you can waive your rights. They've tried that in the healthcare system for years, and that's been decided in many courts that people cannot sign away their rights to sue.
But in my
John, you were
understanding,
nodding. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
But my understanding is that we're not giving the bicycles to the child per se, we're giving them to the school to use. And consequently, it's not a gift to a family, it's a use by the school.
Stuart, I asked, can we just make this, the guy who does the repair work and fixes them up? Because that was part of the other part of the deal was buy equipment, buy the equipment to repair the bikes. You get the old bikes and fix them all up and then give them to a child. So why can't we just pay the guy as a contract labor? Well, that's also an issue. And Randy said you can't do that. Now, if they form a 501c3,
I think the PTA is
Yeah.
a 501c3.
Much like-
Yeah,
Yeah.
why can't the PTA do it?
PTA is a 501c3.
the
So
PTA is a
He said it was still an issue of the village. At that point, then the anti-donation clause kicks in. And that's where we can't give the funds to, because like we can't give money to Friends of the Library. They're a 501c3. So they do things for the village, but the village doesn't fund them. And so he said it would have to be a situation like that, where it was a separate nonprofit organization that could do the fundraising. But as the village, we can't.
I
Can't
would
do that.
imagine that would have to be a competitive grant process or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Probably.
I don't know, but he said no.
Okay,
And then the committee said they didn't want it. They didn't want to deal with it. So we said,
We did look into it a lot though. So
okay.
but it makes, it certainly seems like it should make sense, but not everything in government makes sense, as you realize, being up there at the Molly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys?
I guess one other thing too, I would still like to see the signalized lighting for crosswalks somewhere in the budget as well. I mean, we've got to move forward with
I
this.
think that's in the existing budget. Didn't Michael say that he's working on that in the
Yeah.
existing budget?
Yeah, he believes he has money for that. We're just still waiting for some DOT.
Can we just move them along or out of the way?
Well, the big problem is the DOT.
Yeah, I know. They seem to be a bigger problem.
They are a big problem
Yes.
because,
It's like the cancellation.
here's the rule. Here's the rule right here. And I'm not going to change that rule.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, sir.
So the department heads did their presentations, I guess, last week or the week before, and that's included in here, I assume. So there are some outstanding large projects and one in Public Works. One would be Sagebrush Drive, the repaving of that. And I'm wondering if, I don't know how that fits, these questions fit in at this point.
Say again.
Sagebrush Drive, the repaving of Sagebrush Drive.
That's going to be done, I think, soon, like within the month. I asked Michael because people were complaining about the smell of the asphalt. or
Right.
something.
Right.
And he said, it should be gone. They should remove that pile by the end of the month. So at that time, I was thinking, well, the end of May. And well, it could be a little longer than that.
That's good. Okay.
So it's not in this budget. It's in the old budget.
In the old budget, okay. The other thing is, Lynn and I have talked several times about Saucy
Correct.
Park. About Saucy Park and the
Yes.
plans for that. And I know he has several estimates on a number of different things. And I'm wondering how, going forward, how that fits, those kinds of projects fit into a future budget if they're not already decided on.
I don't think that has been budgeted. Nothing on Saucy Park has been budgeted. Part of the problem with Saucy Park, it's, as I remember, now it's been a couple of years since I was on the council, but the people who live in Saucy Park, in that area, they don't want to park there. Now, this is going to be something. We went through about 20 people and they didn't want, John, I don't
I
know,
remember.
no traffic, no noise. And the classic one, excuse me, ladies, was we're concerned about the little boys peeing behind the bushes. And I thought, now we can do another survey and ask them and see how it goes. But, given the fact that that was irrigation was set up in the past, it was sodded in the past, and then that all washed away in a flood or was vandalized. I don't, until we have a big, let's say, push from the neighborhood, I would be hesitant to spend a lot of money. Now, if you've got a whole ton of people who are clamoring for it, have them start petitioning. That'll help.
Okay.
And then we can do another survey and say, hey, guys, you guys want to park here?
I think this survey they did previously was,
Yeah, I mean, the citizens want a park. I just don't think the neighborhood does, but they also don't want they don't want it how it is currently. They complain about how it looks now, but they don't want anything that anybody else can use.
There you go.
Um,
Welcome to being a counselor.
well, and it's frustrating because, I mean, I grew up in Aztec, which is about the same size, markedly lower demographics, and we had like 5 parks in Aztec.
Yeah.
It was much more family friendly than Corrales is right now with one park, which is a really nice park, and then the big rec area. But we have places to do these types of things, and nobody wants to do them.
and
So
I don't know, certainly it's not binding anymore, I wouldn't think, but I know that the developer 35 years ago, when he built the subdivision, wanted that to be a park. And it was soccer. And I think the irrigation is either set or an estimate is ready to go on that. You have some other estimates on maybe crusher fine and it's just, I'm thinking about a very low level, no skate park, no lights, people coming down from the bike trail. You could stop there, benches and things like that. Just a very quiet neighborhood park.
Okay, Mr. Mayor,
Clean up.
councilors. So, and Zach was part of all this when he was on Parks and Rec, and every meeting we had with that park, we ran into a wall. So I think we should do a survey again, and then, but also have a public meeting with the
Yeah.
public and see what people's interests are, because I mean, that's a lot of work for my department, because we would be the ones putting in everything. My department consists of 2 of us, so we can do it though. I mean, we did the rec center and it came out perfect, but so I really think, I mean, let's do something that we see that the community would want
Sure.
versus just 1 or 2 people, because that is going to be pretty pricey.
So will we have an issue with water?
We will, yeah, we already have an issue with water as is, not just up there, for the whole village. We're currently purchasing water rights from the town of Bernalillo to repay for what we've been over. So we really, water rights is a big issue, and I don't know if that's included in this budget to purchase more.
I don't remember seeing water rights in the budget.
Okay, because I mean, truly, we are in a deficit of water rights from all of our uses, not just the park stuff. So.
Can I ask this? If once the asphalt is removed on a temporary basis, could that just be, smoothed out and just made look a little
Sure.
bit more acceptable, once the asphalt's removed?
We can easily do that because Mike needs to train his guys on the grader. That's a
Yeah.
great place to train. There's
Yeah, I
nothing-
mean, they took all the dirt out.
Yeah,
but it'll be weeds. I mean,
but the grader.
We don't want to
can
scrape
take-
it
Not
to
just
where
any
you're down
water.
to, you're going to
We won't
smooth it
allow
out a
any
little
water
bit.
there for now, so no
That's
beach,
right.
right? So-
well,
I mean,
if the
there's
little
a-
boys got there and pee, they could water the stuff.
Behind the bushes,
That's a
yeah.
community service during a
Yeah.
drought to have a kid pee on a tree.
We are. in a
Yeah, it's a
drought.
long way to groundwater
We'll
up there.
pay kids to,
Better
Put
behind
that
the
in the
bushes
budget.
than in the pool.
Right.
But the other issue with up there too is the well. I mean, I can manually kind of turn it
Right.
on with a stick.
I know.
That's not acceptable. I
I
mean,
know.
Rogers would have to come up and definitely make it usable. I mean, we can get it. I just needed to get it started so I could see what the water pressure was the other day. Yeah, you don't want to, it's not
there.
usable really. Unless I sit up with a stick the whole time.
So if we're that far behind on water rights, what would it take to get us back up to where we should be?
Okay, we just had this meeting. Do you remember what Mike said? I think it's 20 acre feet is what we need to get us,
And how many we have now?
is it 20, 30, you know?
Well, it seems like when Appel was the attorney, it was 30 something.
I want to say 36,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
could be
that was-
wrong. So Mike does know, but Mike said the water.
But is this 20 acre feet every year?
Mhm.
So we do need 20 acre feet. That's about 400 grand. Okay.
But water right now is worth gold.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that too. Mayor, the other thing I wanted to ask is that indications are that we may be heading towards a recession. And consequently, do we have plans in place if our projections do not pan out?
Yes, we'll change our budget.
Well, I know that, but I mean, right now it looks like the people who are keeping the economy going are basically us as residents and so forth, but consumers, that's right. But the markets are just going to hell in a handcart. And they're saying that there's a possible recession on the.
So I would say that we will keep our eye on it and we'll monitor our budget very carefully. We'll monitor our revenue very carefully. We already do that. So you guys get an opportunity to see it every month. That's something we started about 16 years ago. And you'll be able to see what's going on. You'll see year to year how it's trending. And you can see the last couple of years, it's been trending upward. Now, I think part of that is because we have a large number of people in the community who have done pretty much like my daughter has done over in Texas and my son does up in the Northeast Heights. They use the internet. They don't go to all the big box stores. They don't go to the brick and mortar stores. They go over the internet and buy stuff, and they pay their taxes there, and it comes to the village. And so that's what I think we're seeing. Because I don't think we've generated that much money from our businesses, although ex novo is probably generating quite a bit.
Oh, yeah,
But-
but I think you mentioned last time too, that you were curious about our home occupation permits. So
Yeah, I don't know how many there are, but at one time, I know we had like 500 or 600. I'm not sure what it is now. Melanie, do you have a clue?
I know at last count, the business registrations were somewhere between 400 and 500 for the village. So
Okay,
I think it had dropped some.
but they come and
Over
go.
COVID,
Yeah,
yeah.
people come,
Yeah.
businesses, home occup
Yeah.
business come and go.
Just based off of the number of times a day somebody comes in to purchase a business license, we should have tons in the village.
I
so-
believe that's a statistic that we should also monitor. That's probably what you're alluding to.
well, and that, the other thing I was wondering too is when the state deposits the money that from the GRT, what kind of a report do they send along with that? Do they send anything or just say, here's the check and that's it?
It's not very definitive as to who the money is coming from, nor, I think sometimes they put the broad category it's coming from, but they don't tell you. It's not Exxon or Mobil or whoever it may be, or whoever owns a gas station now, or whoever, is doing dog or cat grooming or whatever in the village. You don't know that. It's just in big, broad categories.
Okay.
John, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to follow up for Counselor Murray's benefit. So we went through that about 13,
Long
08,
time
09 back, and we skinnied down our budget a lot, and we had
3,000,
such
2008.
Yeah, 2008. So we had amazing support from all of the departments. I mean, we canceled cleaning services and everybody had to vacuum their own stuff and empty their own trash. And we went from the bottom up and combed through it and cut out every ounce of fat. And we probably touched some lean meat in there too. But thanks to all these guys' efforts, we survived it pretty well, but we were aware of what was going on every step of the way. So we should be able to do something similar this round, although it'll
Yes,
look,
we
you're
don't,
right,
we
it'll
don't,
look
we don't
different.
want to do that, but
No.
that was when they had the building collapse, and
Yeah.
all and all that GRT that was coming in quit. And we got down to like $3.5 million budget, which when you look at what we have here, that's almost 50%.
Yeah.
Yes, Zach.
I mean, and it looks like we have $400,000 buffer built into the budget right now too, between revenue and expenditure. So there's some cushion in place already just off the current budget.
Actually, Counselor Burkett, it also includes transfers at the bottom of the first page.
Yeah.
So those are like.
It's there, yeah.
expenditures,
Never mind.
so-
But we do have a buffer because we'll have an end of year amount.
Yeah.
That we could carry over that we haven't, and probably is the reason there's $4 million up at the Santa Fe Fund, because it was just stashed every year and never used. Yes, sir.
Ron has mentioned in the past about the small community money that comes from the state. Is that an annual thing that we get?
Yes.
And is that in here as well?
Rena,
It's,
It's in a different fund,
Counselor
isn't it, Raina?
Boldman, it's on page 2. On page 2, second to the last line, small states, small cities. This year we've received $385,000 from that.
State Small Cities Fund. State Small Cities. I think one year it was huge. I'm like, well, this is pretty big, 385.
We anticipated 135, so it was a lot more than. we thought.
Oh, I see. I think one year was like close to $500,000. I think Communiac was married then. I'm not-
Seems to me though, we've talked before about the Marty Chavez slush fund and we don't know where that's at, but it seems like to me that the electrical infrastructure that we need to support electric and hybrid vehicles, seem like that would be a perfect opportunity to go after that money and get it installed here in the village. So we could anticipate purchases for the police and fire department if necessary.
And we've talked about that. chief and I. But one of the problems, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but one of the, it's not a problem, but one of the issues with all this money is they're just routing it through all the usual places. And you have to apply for those funds from the usual places. It's not like you can call up Marty and say, hey, Marty, I'm going to send you an application for, some money for some electric vehicles. And then he can just turn around and write you a check. You got to go through all the hoops and you got to go through the competition to get those funds. And
It's something we should do though. I mean,
we're doing it.
okay.
Ron, can I ask a question? I didn't want to raise it during the general meetings, but you mentioned in regard to those funds that there are a couple of restrictions in terms of, and it almost sounds like what USDA rural development barriers that we face. For size of community and income of community, is that related to that as well?
To what, to the LGIP?
No,
to the rural
the
development.
Marty's or Bianca's funds, that money.
I think more of his issues are shovel-ready things that they want. They
Mhm.
want a plan. They want something that they can do like now.
So I'm wondering in terms of how they define shovel ready. We do have a preliminary plan for the art center that
No.
doesn't qualify.
No,
Okay.
no. When you mean shovel ready, it's like you have, the only thing I can relate this to is up there at the Flood Control Authority, where we would actually have the design.
Right.
We've already gone through all the conceptual plans, and then we have a design, we own the property. It's basically right here, and you get the grant. And even then, when you have all that stuff, you may not get the money for 6 or 8 months. But that's shovel ready. And the fact that we were able to turn around a lot of these in 20, 22 months, I mean, that was
Yeah.
really great, because even the other shovel ready people couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So it's really, sometimes it can be frustrating when you have a plan and you're trying to move forward and you want to go to a design, and then you got it and you say, well, now where's the money? Well, you apply for the money and then you have to go through a competition, and it may take, 4 or 5, 6 months for them to finally decide that, hey, we're going to give you the money. I mean, it's like, think of the legislative funds. So they say, okay, we're going to give you $500,000. Well, you don't get that till July or August, 6 months later. So,
Yeah.
it's the wheels of government move very slowly. And that can be both a good thing and a bad thing. A good thing because you don't do something haphazard. And the bad thing is that you're ready to go and people are chomping at the bit, and it doesn't happen for a long time.
Yeah.
But nobody's chomping at the bit more than I am. You can ask them. Yes.
So we have a rec center that we're working on doing from the bond, but we had a previous design of the rec center that was substantially larger than the design we're going to have to go with because of budgetary constraints. Wouldn't that be considered a shovel ready job? Because we already have those plans from the previous.
We don't
design.
have that money yet,
Which money
the
though?
bond money.
We will though, what, next month?
Yes, and we're hoping it will also have another grant we found out about that's sort of like this, have to be in before June 15th. That really, I mean, we can check off every box, and we're right there. It's us.
What
And
is the
that may
process?
complete the entire construction, right?
Because we can go from version 1.0 to version 2.0 very quickly.
Oh, yeah, no, we know that. And we're talking about that. And next week, we're actually hoping to get wouldn't it next week, we're going to get a price on the
Yes.
whole thing?
Yes.
I mean, we do sit around and eat bonbons a lot, but I mean, we are, actually, we do something.
Everybody loves bonbons though, so I'm not going to judge you for that.
Go ahead.
It's
Go ahead.
appropriate.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, so this was sent out by Tanya, right, last night?
Tanya.
Yeah, so Tanya found this grant. It's called the Regional Recreation Centers and Quality of Life Grants.
Yep.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
what-
That's
it's
where
the
I
same
heard
one.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
Yep, $45 million.
so in just reading what I saw this morning, we hit every criteria.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we are looking at doing this. Tanya last night stayed up thinking of what she could put in, the wording of it. Because right here, when you look at it, it doesn't talk about an application, what we need to fill out to even get it. So she's working on trying to figure that out right now. But Renee Ward was in charge of sending this out. She also was our finance officer here for the Village of Corrales. So the funny thing is she called Tanya to see if she knew how to get a hold of the other Parks and Rec people. And then so Tanya called me, and I do know how to get a hold of them all, but I'm like,
Don't call any.
do I want to give any of these names out? I don't
Only
want
the good ones.
competition.
So.
But they have 3 tiers. They have a smaller one, but they have tier 3 is for I think 500,000 to over $1 million
So, and she knows about the debt. I mean, it opens June 1st.
in June.
The deadline for application is June 15th.
Correct.
So it's a really quick turnaround.
Yeah, so
That's one of the things that makes it difficult. And so, yeah, that almost has to be shovel ready, and it is shovel ready,
Yeah.
but it can be modified to include the locker rooms and
Right. Because that was,
the weightlifting rooms, all that stuff.
when we had that
should-
meeting with facility build and they had to downsize, what they wanted to do. This would bring it up, I think, to the original idea.
Well, it won't get us to where the classrooms and the storage. This would just get us the locker rooms and the gym. But that's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
because truly our facility over here is used for more than just recreation. I mean, if we have a fire in the Bosque, I mean, that turns into be our emergency control center.
Yep.
If we need to shelter someone, the current gym would be, you wouldn't be getting a ton of people in there because it's not that big, but with a big full-size high school gym, we could get a ton of people in there. But we really need the locker room facility because I'm sure, I know that there's something in place that says if you got a structure this big, you have to have this many toilets. What I currently have in our locker rooms right now, I don't think would handle the gym. So we really truly need both of those facilities at the same time. But I mean, really reading this, we've hit every criteria that they're asking for on this grant.
It's great.
So, and Tanya was excited. She's like,
We all,
"Oh."
yes, we all were excited about it.
So I mean, I sent her over the survey we did. She wants our numbers she wants addresses from basketball so we can say, look at this, these aren't just Corrales kids. I mean, we had families this year in our basketball, Tramway and Lomas, that were driving here for practice. I mean, so there wasn't many basketball leagues though this year. So,
We won't mention that.
but, so we are hitting more than just Corrales. In the swimming pool, we see it every day. So I
And
mean,
that I think is one of the criteria, that it's a regional facility. So.
look
even
at the
get one
soccer
kid
fields
from-
on a
One
weekend.
kid from Tramway and Lomas makes it a regional facility, right?
Right? We draw from 2 counties.
That's right. That's right.
So
Problem
we
is-
do hit every
Do
criteria. So
do you remember what was the limit on that? Was it up to $1 million?
it said 500 to $1 million plus.
Okay,
Million plus.
because we're probably going to need the plus.
We're close to like 1.5 is what we're gonna need
Yeah.
to get the locker room. So.
Yeah. I think the number is going to come in like at 4.5 or 4.2 or something like that for the big deal.
But in this one is really, I mean, I really don't want to start any construction until after the pool's closed, so.
Yeah.
End of August would be this, and then we would have the bond money. This, honestly, they did say they would give it to us immediately too. Or it's reimbursed, we have to spend it, but then they'll reimburse right away.
Well,
So-
that's a good thing. We do have some funds that we can use.
Yeah.
So during that meeting, I guess it's now over a year ago, and facility build laid out the plans. One of the problems was the significantly and rapidly increasing costs due to supply chain issues. And I think it was a very smart decision on your part, just to say, wait a minute, we don't have to do it right away. Let's see if the costs come down. So have the costs come down? They haven't.
So I mean, just from 3 months ago, the price that Bill gave me to what we were given the other day, I mean, they went up again. So, but if we do get this money, that would help take
Yeah.
care of it.
Yeah.
That would help take care of it. So, because really when we did the bond, that's what it would have cost to do it. But then with steel and everything going,
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Well, and I think to your point of everything going up every day, the $4 million, and I know we only have 50% of that, we can spend or 40% of that, whatever we agreed to. We need to start finding some projects for that money that's sitting in the bank account before these projects become
Oh, don't
unaffordable.
get in so big a hurry.
Spend freely.
Let's approach this in a logical way, because there are some big
Right.
ticket items that we are actually thinking about. And so those will come before you, before they're done, but we'd like to sort of have some cash available if you need it.
No, I think that,
Sometimes, sometimes that speaks loudly, having that money handy. And remember, once it's spent, we don't have any guarantee that we're going to accumulate that kind of money fast.
Right.
So let's be fiscally conservative, but judicious in our purchases.
Yeah. I just
Okay.
think the leverageability of those
I
funds is
agree with you
diminishing every day.
completely. I think that's true. And I think that's what we want to keep it for, to have it. I don't think we should bury it in a mattress. No, I think it should be used, but I think we need to use it judiciously and appropriately for the benefit of the village.
Well, I'm just having some thoughts about the same thing because I know in the ICIP that we're going to be discussing in the future. Seems like to me, though, there's always the things that get shoved to the bottom that will never see the light of day.
Sometimes because there's so much money.
Yeah.
But if you have, so one of the things that I've discovered over the last, gosh, however many years it's been, if you have partners, if you can cobble together partners, and if you can have some of your cash to leverage against grants, not grants, but legislative funds or, some grants. Because, for example, FEMA will give you, let's say $1 million, but you have to have a 25 to 30% match. So that's where you want to have that 4 million or something close to that or whatever stashed. Because, I mean, we're burning through this bond money. I mean, this bond money is going to get spent. A lot of these funds that you were talking about the million that we get, and then the million we get later.
Right.
I mean, we've already sort of identified where that's going to go. And it's going to go to good things like fire suppression and sewer, two big items. But no, I think about that as we go along. Think about how we cobble together different organizations, partners to do a project. Because I think your county commissioner is a good idea. It's not a huge chunk of money,
No.
but and then the state legislature. We'd go to the state legislature and ask them for money, and they might only give us a couple $100,000 for a 2 million, like the Los Montoyas, $2 million project. But the good thing is they gave it to us, and they came out and stood in front of the ribbon to cut it. Got them a lot of notoriety. And that's a
Along with
good
the
thing.
head of the EPA.
Yes, the EPA came out. That's right. This guy,
No, it
No,
was
the big guy.
It was
the big guy,
Gina.
Jenny McCarthy came out.
Yeah.
But you were there too.
Yeah, I was.
That was a good day.
So those are kind of things to keep in the back of your mind as we're trying to do these things. And, you know, try not to get too eager to spend that 4 million. I mean, we're going to spend it. It'll get spent eventually, but let's spend it effectively.
And are we on track to have a discussion on land acquisition, potential land acquisition?
Didn't you want to have a closed session next meeting?
We are. You'll see that on the agenda when it comes up. Friday.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I have a question from a story that was on the news this morning about our water situation. It says one of the limiting factors for the water for our farmers right now is that they're only running the siphon pumps 4 days a week because of staffing issues. And also they have to turn them off at certain points in time for maintenance. Is there any way we have money in the budget to potentially help staff an additional day or two of monitoring that
Okay.
equipment to get water?
Let me say this. The MRGCD has a whole ton of money.
Okay.
They have money. I don't know about this 4 days a week. I don't know about the staffing deal. I do know they only run 12 hours a day because of the noise that they supposedly generate to the neighborhoods.
Yeah, it said 4 days a week they're running them too right now.
I
It's
don't
because-
know about
But it
that.
said because of staffing issues.
And I don't know about how much maintenance is required.
Okay, that was all. I think it was all on KOB this morning.
Yeah,
So.
but they have a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody who irrigates pays them every year.
Yeah.
Your property tax, look at your property tax bill. You pay them every year. They have a lot of money. Staffing could be a problem. Yeah, having people do work could be a problem, but for the pumps, but I think they have the money to draw upon.
Because it could be lack of candidates rather than lack of
Yeah,
budget.
yes.
Mayor, is there an update on the water flow for the season through the?
Probably end of June.
End of June.
You know, we've totally ignored Rick. Rick, do you have any questions?
No, I'm listening and no questions, but just going back on one issue. That's a long, long time ago, but it's worth noting. Some of the most ineffective money I ever spent for my legislative draw was building parks that the community wanted. But then, like you said, the neighborhood just had it and we built them. We put up basketball goals and then we took them down. We put this up and then we took it down. So I couldn't agree more that we need to have a community involvement, not just neighbors versus just the community part. So that's really important. And the latter part is, thank you for acknowledging, but the latter part also is important that for the legislative, I know what they're going through the last couple of years is that issue about working together. They're really looking at that when putting out some monies. And you made a quick statement, but it's a big one. The fact that we have all these wonderful kids coming from all over city of Albuquerque to come down and play in that big park. And that's because the city doesn't have big parks anymore. In fact, they're shutting them down left and right. Everybody wants pocket parks. And so we're lucky to have a great big park for kids to play soccer. But believe me, they're going to become fewer and fewer and harder to get. So we ought to utilize that to our advantage if we be getting those monies, because we're going to keep that park around, if that made sense.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I apologize for not turning around more often. Sorry,
No problem.
my fault. Yes, sir.
I have a quick question. It's just probably because I'm just not up to speed on a wastewater enterprise. But I noticed in 21, there was a budget item for professional services and that went away. Did we get somebody on staff who's a qualified operator or?
Oh, yeah, we have Michael.
Oh, he's a qualified operator. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And his helper, Julian, is taking classes to become a qualified operator.
That's absolutely brilliant. All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
outstanding.
So anybody else? Ron, do you want to add something I didn't cover or say, or something I said wrong?
No, I would just say that in the almost 3 years that I've been here, I feel that this is one of the tightest, not tight physically, but one of the best put together budgets that I've seen. And a lot of credit goes to Raina for that.
Absolutely.
Mayor, council, if I could tell you just a couple changes that you'll see on the next meeting. At the bottom of some of the department head budgets, we gave money to like the tree committee and the bikes was there, but that's not there no more. But for some of those, they're not under a certain line item. I just wanted you to see it. The money is there. I'll be moving it up to a line item. So the actual amount will still stay the same. It'll just, those will be in a different area. Also in the.
Raina, before you go, it's important to remember that it'll be moved up to the top line, but it'll still be considered as not part of the operational budget of any particular department.
And also in the finance budget, all of these years, we've always paid some attorney fees, some engineer fees, different kind of services we've paid out of finance. I will be trying to move some of those out of ours and putting it in general services. So our finance budget may go down and general services go up. But I'll be looking at that in the next few days, but ultimately the numbers will be the same as they are today. Just in a different area.
So Randy and Ron, do we decide we're going to vote on this next meeting?
Yes, the proposal would be to have, you'll see an item on the agenda to vote on this, signifying that you've had your input or you've been informed about it. We're not required to do that by DFA, but the mayor and us thought it would be appropriate for you to vote on it so that you have seen it and have essentially agreed to it or certified it before you actually finally have to vote on it in July.
Do you have enough time, Melanie, to put that together? There was some email you sent.
It's already done.
What?
It's already done. I
Okay.
have the resolution ready to go. Just in
Okay.
case.
You were just giving me a chance to back out, huh?
Yes.
I see.
It's an interesting way to do things because it would be ridiculous for us to present you a final budget that you haven't seen or voted on in July and tell you you can't really change it or you really can't question it, you know.
So you guys come up with questions, you're sitting there doing whatever you're doing and you happen to see something on the sheet of paper you're questioning about, circle it, put a little star by it, write something down, email me, email Melanie or email Raina, but probably email me first and I may be able to answer. But if I don't know, I'll get Raina and try to address any concerns or questions you have. Yeah, I feel very good about it. I really feel good about, supporting our staff. They're working hard. Our fire chief, if he wasn't bald before, he'd definitely be bald now from pulling his hair out. Anyway,
Mayor, so one other question, I
Yes,
guess,
sir.
is the Interior Drain Committee,
Yes, sir.
are they making progress such that we'll know kind of where the direction's going on that?
We had a meeting with the district, I believe it was last week.
Yeah.
And we discussed the trails issue again and got clarification that we were right. We got the message that trails is a bad word. And then the second part of the meeting was the interior drain. And so they're working on getting us an MOU over so that we can proceed on the committee with that. And we mentioned to them that we had, I believe it's $35,000 committed from, or is it more than that, from Senator McKenna?
150,000.
Okay, I was a little low. We have $150,000 committed from Senator McKenna. But we can't proceed until we have this MOU in place. And
So-
it's a priority for them now.
Weren't they calling it a JPA? Seems like they said JPA.
Yeah,
I asked
yeah.
that question because I said, well, JPAs, if we
No, I think you're right, man.
exchange money.
I think
And
you're right.
They said, no, we're not going to exchange any funds, but
No, I think
anyway,
that's-
we're waiting to, so they're going to tell us what we can do. Okay, so they're going to set the parameters. And as I was talking to the drain committee, they kept asking these questions. I said, as long as we're within the parameters, we don't have to talk to them. I asked them that specific question. I said, if something comes up that's not in the parameters, can we negotiate? And she says, and they said, in fact, I think it was just Jason.
Right.
If you stay within the parameters, you can call us and tell us what you're doing, but we don't care. As long as you do it, what we've told you. And if you have something you want to do different, there will not be any negotiation.
So I guess one of the other questions I have is the culverts crossings, are we going to have an engineer review those to make sure that they're safe for fire department and so forth? Because,
If it's necessary, we'll do that.
okay,
If we want to cross with a fire suppression line, we just do it.
yeah. No, I'm just want to make sure that the crossings have sufficient strength to handle.
Oh,
the
yeah,
equipment.
absolutely. Yes, no, yeah. If that comes up, if that's an issue.
Sure.
Yes.
We got
Who else?
an email from Melanie about the cancellation of the DOT meeting tomorrow. Is there any indication as to when in the future? No.
2023.
How about never? Does that work for you?
Yeah, they don't want to talk,
Never
they don't want,
lands.
if you figured it out, they don't want to talk to us.
Really?
This
But
is,
they're subtle about it, right?
Yeah.
this is the third time in the last 12 months that they've canceled the meeting on short notice. And it's a variety of reasons, but it kind of shows you the priority that they have for some of the, they have these sorts of meetings with various communities throughout the year. And when they do have a meeting like this, they do have a fairly thorough agenda that they've prepared, that they discuss. But it's, if they've got some other reason that comes up that's a higher priority than a tier 3 road or something that we're doing, that's 3 times in the last 12 months.
So how
tells
quickly
you-
do you think they put together a meeting and agenda if we said we take over Corrales Road?
They would be here tomorrow. They would make that meeting work tomorrow. Then we'd like to discuss the takeover Crossroads super meetings back on the books.
Yeah,
So that does bring the question up. The MTB meeting Friday seems to be focusing on pedestrian safety. So if you guys got any ideas or questions you want to ask, send them to Bill and myself. Because I tend to kind of float some things before them if we can. I mean, it may not be correct, but still, if they're going to go after pedestrian safety as a priority item, I don't see why we wouldn't qualify for some of that.
Well, I think that probably, oh gosh, I just think back to that picture of that road in Los Lunas that, you can't just put a pathway or
Oh, I
a trail
understand.
across somebody's private property. So you condemn it, you buy it, and then you build what you want. And if it's a state highway and you're gonna change it, they're gonna make you do certain things.
I understand that, but I think that there are also other avenues where they've got to bend a little bit in order to, accommodate villages like ourselves. Route 4 up State Highway 4 up through Amos Springs, sidewalk right next to the highway.
How
Yeah.
long is that sidewalk, by the way?
Oh, it's over 300 or 400 feet.
Yeah, it's all the way from the monastery down to the restaurants on
Yeah.
the south end of town.
Yeah. I mean, somebody had to approve that. Now, it may have been 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
Maybe when standards weren't new, weren't so
But I
tight.
think Madrid is the same way. The highway that goes through Madrid on the other side of the mountains, they have sidewalks on both sides, and there's on the west side, there's not much more of a margin than what we have.
Yeah, so I think there's some pushback we can do. I'll
You're
bring
more
it up.
than welcome to push.
I'll push.
Because I asked, I said, why not?
Yeah.
And they told me.
Well, I mean, we've got obviously Main Street has done the work. We've got some plans for partial phase one improvements.
Right.
Come on, folks. We can, anyway, that's just, like I said, though, if you had any
So-
ideas. send
So
them to-
I would say one other thing about the use of the term sidewalks.
That's right.
In the
Yes,
village of the Corrals, sidewalks is probably not the best term.
correct.
Right.
Trails is a four-letter word. So
Pathways playable.
I would use what Main Street came up with, really a pretty good one, pedestrian access.
Yeah.
It's actually, 2 words, but it doesn't seem to disturb anybody.
Pedestrian access route.
Yes, yeah, that will be the term I'll use Friday.
Okay.
That just sound,
Safe.
there sounds
pedestrian
Orwellian
access.
doublespeak behind it somewhere. It's like,
Right.
that's the name for a driveway.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Is there, so speaking of like Madrid and MS Springs, do we know of any other municipalities that are running into this same roadblock with DOT? Because if there's any way for us to figure that out, we could, sort of form some kind of block up and present
Would
something.
the municipal league have an idea about something?
I have no
I
idea how to
didn't ask.
find them. There's
I
what,
hadn't
100?
talked to them before when I was there at the municipal league, and now it'd be probably a good time. You need to remember that they started this, I think they got their first monies back in 96 or 97, I want to say. Because I was talking to Groman about this too, and it was about the time that he started working for the village. So it's been going on a long time. That's what I said the other day, I don't want this multi-purpose facility, this performing arts facility to go on for 20 years. I want to get it done. Or at least, have it planned so we can get it done.
I'm curious about the repaving out here. I know we got I think that was ICIP money last year. Are there plans to?
For the
The
parking lot
parking
here?
lot.
Yeah.
Yes, we had a meeting with Amy Bell and others about 2 weeks ago. And we've got $101,000, I believe, that's from an ICIP project. The total cost on a complete redo of the parking lots around 400,000. But we think we may have some sources of money that we're still working on to do that. And so it's moving forward. It's one of those ones it's waiting for the jump start, because we don't want to start it with just $101,000 if it's going to cost even 200,000 or 300,000. Because the parking lots are kind of a hard thing to phase. This small parking lot is. And so, but we're optimistic that we may have another funding source.
And does that include the cleanup, the walkway between the community center and the senior center, that whole area back there? That's
Yeah.
included?
It includes kind of there's be a lot of trees in front of where the community center is and the senior center over to where the animal services are right now.
Amy
there'll be-
Bell's going to do a presentation for you at the June 21st council meeting
Amy
an
Bell
update.
is.
with an update on the plan for that.
Oh, thank you, Melanie.
And hopefully by that time, we'll have a little more information on some of the funding sources too.
I think we're having is it August 18th for the ICIP?
Yeah, August 18th, I believe, is the deadline for the ICIP.
Actually, submission. I learned
Submission.
Yesterday was 19th, but
Yeah.
so where are we in terms of when we need to submit our ideas and things for the ICIP list?
Now.
Yeah.
Because the council will have to vote on them I don't know when they August, probably in July. You'll have to vote on them in
Right.
July.
We'll probably talk about it in June.
Okay.
I mean, that would be a plan to sort of get everybody's feeling about how we should do it and what we should get and, where they should be.
Yep.
I just sat in on the third webinar for the ICIP funding. So I have all the details. And they actually said today for any projects that you're anticipating funding, like our rec center, they recommend, so this is coming from DFA, they're recommending that you budget 20% over any estimate that you get from a builder, plus an additional 30 to 50% to accommodate any fluctuations in the market costs.
Rick, you have any questions?
No, that 30% just threw me over the, over the loop.
Gets your attention, doesn't it?
It
When are you
sure
coming
did.
back? When are you coming back?
I hopefully we're gonna have our scheduled flight home on the 21st.
Wow, 3 more days. Oh,
You bet. Boy, it's been long.
I bet you. Okay. Okay, anything else? Okay, so I guess we're ready to adjourn. It looks like, let's make sure, we've done everything we're supposed to do. So let's call it an evening. Meeting is adjourned. Rick, thank you for coming
Thank you.
Thank you.
tonight.
Yeah, enjoy yourself.
Okay, no, I already did that one.
Where you are.
My-
Yeah.
I enjoy myself coming home right now, but thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.